Today we're going to talk about how you find your inspiration.
Finding your inspiration. So the 3 ways of finding your inspiration.
When we come right back.
Hi everybody, I'm Andrew.
I'm Julie.
And together we're 324 Weekly TV. We're your source for news, reviews, and tips you can use about mindfulness and meditation.
Today we're talking about how to find your inspiration.
3 ways.
The first way is find a teacher.
The second way is a life-changing event.
And the third is a meandering path.
So talking about finding a teacher, and you mentioned before that your experience has been somewhat unique when it comes to online, offline. What has been your experience?
Because it started before the internet. So I started practicing in the 1990s, mid-1990s, and at that time there was no internet. We know a lot of people that they have told me really interesting stories about how they found their teachers. One man was part of an online meditation group, and he was watching the responses of someone online, a psychologist, and he reached out to that man, and this man only worked with a limited amount of people, but because he found him online and because he was so touched by him, he said yes, and consequently they've been working together online because they live quite far away for over 10 years. This is really an interesting and a wonderfully touching story. And then other people will find out maybe now about communities online, but they'll gather together for offline experiences. So some communities are quite explorative in nature, so they combine elements of Buddhism and Christianity and maybe Sufism and all these esoteric practices, and even a lot of New Age, things like New Age practices. A lot of things are being combined.
Hippie stuff. Well, that's what the New Age used to be referred to.
It was the hippie stuff,
when I was a kid growing up, any New Age stuff was, that's hippie stuff.
Yeah.
It was counterculture.
Counterculture.
Yeah, it was arose out of counterculture post the, Second World War, Vietnam War, and people were just, okay, we need some love now, right? It historically stemmed from that need to undo, even the Leave It to Beaver world of the 50s, which is what those kids grew up with that turned into the hippies of the late 60s and 70s that created the New Age conversations.
Yeah, and where I was at Esalen was born out of that era, right? So a lot of the great minds of the great people who came through Esalen at that time have influenced the world in big ways. Yeah. And some people have also started with a community and then left the community just preferring to sit at home, and other people are doing the reverse. So when you're looking for a community online, you were talking about Brené Brown. I think Brené Brown is a wonderful human being who so many people were touched by her original research, on vulnerability and her books, that, there's a whole tour de force behind her and people who are really interested in becoming mindful, and they trust her. Yeah. So they're going to turn to her to teach them. And that's the way with so many teachers, as you were talking about, right?
Well, it is. Yeah. So that's the teacher element. Mm-hmm. The second one is, some big major event in your life. It could
I think they're like big stops in people's lives, it's the same thing you were saying with things like drug and alcoholism, that you hit a point where something in me says, or I hit a point where something in me says, no, enough. Yeah. A new way needs to be found. And people hit a wall in their workplace, people hit walls in their relationships, in their marriages, people hit walls in their workplaces, all over the place. So those walls are there to help us. I think, the wall is the way, because it's saying, okay, I can't keep going like this. This is not nourishing me. My body's not going to keep going. my soul's not going to keep going, my heart's not going to keep, nothing's going to keep going.
Yeah.
So how do I find a new way? And so really those big events, which can be small, you can be looking at my kids in a different way and realizing, hey, I'm not spending enough time with you.
Yeah.
To a big life-changing event, like I've been in an accident, I almost died, I've reviewed my life, and I've decided I don't want to die with my life being the way it was.
I have a friend who's going through that right now, and it's amazing the resources that and I know for her these resources were unknown prior to this happening. So now she's been introduced to a whole variety of things that are mindfulness in nature and meditation in nature, or that come from that. Major events that people can, end up being led to.
Near-death experiences.
Near death, yeah. And I mean, I know that, I mentioned before, the programs at U of T. And one of the most popular ones now is the end of life care, and all these people in hospices that now there's training more and more people, and families involved with the end of life care are now getting exposed to mindfulness and mindfulness based practices that they never would have experienced had their loved one not be in hospice and, perhaps at end of life. So the last point is the meandering path. So, what I have in my mind, and my mind's eye is this babbling brook. And, I used to have a cottage up north, and there used to be these springs on the property, and you'd come across them randomly because they would just emerge from the aquifer, and they would all of a sudden be there. And then they would go away, and then they would be there, and then they would go away. So, I think that's, my mental image of what the meandering path is. And, in some future episodes, we've met some people along the way who, have had experiences from their childhood, being raised as mindful kids. They've grown up in, talk about the hippies. So they were raised by hippies and brought to retreat centers and grew up. So, we know we're working on a couple of shows in that regard coming up.
I just want to say, though, about the babbling brook, which is a beautiful analogy, because I think in that way we're all a bit on a meandering path. But what we were talking about was really that it can be. We've all had childhood experiences when you climb to the top of a tree and you stand at the top of the tree and feel the wind blow your hair in the breeze, and you can see at a great distance from a perspective you've never seen before. Or, there's just lots of experiences that we had as children because we were much closer to something, I think, real as children. And then those could be that kind of an event. It could be I picked up a magazine at the airport and I read an article and something in it touched me. That the meandering path is really paying attention to the clues that come to us to support us, to help us on our way, and to help bring us back when we get lost. Yeah, which we do all the time.
Yeah. Like we are now.
Yeah. Something like that.
Well, now we're not meandering. Now we're babbling.
Now we're babbling. Oh, come on!
I think with that, I'm Andrew.
I'm Julie.
And together we're 324 Weekly TV. If you like what we do, please subscribe. Ideally, you want to ring the bell and then you'll know when our next show is. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. Come back soon.
Bye-bye.
And cut.
Okay, you have to stop doing that and cut thing because sometimes you cut too soon and
I did. There was plenty of it.
You did, but I'm just saying in another show you didn't. Because it was a perfect.
I know,
and then you go.
I'm being very conscious of the editing word. I'm taking big pregnant pauses.
Oh my gosh, you are. Okay.
We're back.
We don't say we're back.
Oh, you have a pause. I'm like waiting for you to speak. Okay, ready.